Hi everybody, I am Jarrett Ross, the GeneaVlogger, and on today's vlog, I will be discussing how I broke down the brick wall that is my Goldberg family. My Goldberg family has been one of the most difficult brick walls for me to break down in my genealogy research. For the longest time, I've only had it traced to my great-grandfather David Goldberg, who was born in 1866 based on his naturalization records. Now, in his naturalization records, it actually gave us a location of where he was from, which it said Sukorani or Sokoran. It was a little bit hard to tell. What was really interesting was that in the declaration, the town was listed as being part of Russia, and in the petition, it was listed as being part of Romania. Anyone who's done any genealogy in Eastern Europe knows that a lot of these towns had the borders change on them, so they were in different countries throughout different time periods. So this was a real big hint for me. And I was able to figure out that the town was actually Sokotrani, which was part of Romania at one time in the Bessarabia region, but it is now actually part of Ukraine. Another interesting thing about this naturalization is that my great-grandfather signed his declaration in Yiddish. I posted the signature to get a translation, and somebody told me that the name actually was signed David Goldenberg. Now, we had always heard that the name wasn't originally Goldberg, but having a name change from Goldenberg was not what I was expecting. But it was a huge clue. At that point, I had basically gotten to my brick wall, and it stayed there for many years. But just about a year ago, I was going through all of the different documentation because it's always good to just review everything, and you never know if you missed something, and it turns out that I missed something. As I was reviewing the different censuses, I realized that my grandfather Simon wasn't in the 1930 census. Or at least I hadn't found him. So when I looked for Simon Goldberg living in Philadelphia, I found one, but he was living in a household that I did not recognize. I didn't know any of the names. They were all Goldbergs, but I had no idea how we were related to these people or if this was even my grandfather in the census. But there was a major clue in the census that proved it was my grandfather. As I scrolled over to look at his occupation, I noticed that he owned a junk shop. Well, I knew that my grandfather owned a junk shop. He worked selling machinery for the majority of his life, and even in the 1920 census, where I have him living with his known family, he's owning a junk shop. So from there, I had to find out who were these people that he was living with, and are there any living descendants of these people? I was able to trace out this family tree, and then I was able to actually find people who were living descendants of this family. Now, I lucked out with this because they were really excited when I got in touch with them, and they were actually really into genealogy themselves. And when I told them how I thought we were related and I sent them all the details, they said, yes, that's definitely our family that this Simon Goldberg is with in 1930, but we don't know a Simon Goldberg. And as I talked a bit further with them, there was a little detail about my side of the family that they knew. There's a cousin on my side who is a pretty well-known person, and they knew that they were related to this person specifically. And they told me that they had always heard growing up, oh, this person is a cousin of ours. Well, they are a cousin. So when I talked to them about that, I was like, we need to do a DNA test. And they said, we've actually done a DNA test on Ancestry. Now, my father's sister had done a test on Ancestry. She was my link from my father's side to the Ancestry database. And I told them, please take a look and see if you find her in your list. And sure enough, she was up there with over 200 shared centimorgans. So now we not only had the paper trail, but we had the DNA to prove it. What was really great too was that these newfound cousins had a bunch of information on their branch as well as some other possibilities that there might be some other family out there. I used that information and I was able to find a few more distant cousins who descended from their part of the branch. They actually descended from a brother of my great grandfather David. And they descended from a brother whose name was Benjamin Goldenberg. And interestingly enough, just like my side, they had gone back and forth between using the Goldenberg and Goldberg name, but ultimately stuck with Goldberg in America. So now that I was not only in touch with cousins and had proven that they were related, but I had found even more cousins through the information that they supplied me, I was just blown away because for the longest time, that was my most difficult brick wall. And as I was researching their branch of the family, one thing I noticed was that when some of the cousins had immigrated in, they had written that there was a brother Peretz Goldberg who was also living in the States. So now we had David, we had Benjamin, and now we had a third possible sibling, a Peretz Goldberg. After noting the name Peretz Goldberg, I started to go through the shared matches between my aunt and this newfound cousin of ours. And lo and behold, this other match pops up, and he has an ancestor in his tree named Peretz Goldberg. So I contact the match and I explain everything that I've been doing and what I'm looking for and what he can look for to help prove that his Peretz is the Peretz in our family tree as well. And in talking to him, one of the things that he knew was that little fact about the famous cousin from my branch of the family. So not only were we getting that DNA hit again, but we were also getting that confirmation through this story. And we also had one of the descendants of Benjamin coming through and listing Peretz as his contact in the United States. And as I'm doing all of this stuff, I get an email from somebody telling me that they're a descendant of the Goldberg family, that they've had this story that they're related to this famous person, and that they're matching my dad's kit on Family Tree DNA. Well, I'd been so caught up with everything on Ancestry, I hadn't checked my Family Tree DNA kits in a while. I hop on Family Tree DNA, and there's this other guy who has an over 200 centimorgan match to my father. He's matching another cousin who I got to upload to Family Tree DNA. And as I start to look through his family tree, I start to notice some familiar names. And the reason I noticed familiar names was that a couple years before all of this, I had found a fairly significant match to my father, but I couldn't figure out how she was related. She had just enough centimorgans and especially a big shared segment that she had to have been related to sometime in 2 or 3 generations. So this girl who I didn't know how she was related was coming from the same family as this new match who emailed me. And they descended from a Rebecca Goldberg. Now things got even crazier, and this is what's really amazing, is that it just really snowballed, is that the newest match from Family Tree DNA had done interviews with the elders in the family when he was a child in the 50s. And he had received the name of Rebecca's parents. The names are Shlomo Zalman Goldenberg and Malka Goldenberg. So now all of a sudden, not only did I have 3 new siblings to my great-grandfather, but I had very likely names for his parents. Now, I had never found my great-grandfather's tombstone. A lot of cousins have said that he's buried in Boyle Heights in California, and every time I've gone out there to LA, I just haven't been able to get around to trying to find his grave, and it hasn't been taken pictures of online. So I haven't been able to see the Hebrew inscription of what his father's name is. But we were able to look at the gravestone for Rebecca Goldberg, and it did show that her father's name was Shlomo Zalman. Now, before all of this, I had gone through Jewish Gen to try to find some sort of link in the records of Sokorani and my family. There's really not that many records available on there. And with such little information that I had, I couldn't find much. But now, with all of this new information, I thought maybe there's something on there. And I went through looking at the Goldberg name and the Goldenberg name, and I really wasn't able to find much. But then I decided to start looking in the burials. And when I looked in the burials for Bessarabia, that's when I came across Shlomo Zalman Goldberg, buried in 1910, and a picture of his gravestone. Now, there's no way of knowing just yet if this truly is my great-great-grandfather, but it seems quite likely. And the fact that we have a Shlomo Zalman Goldberg with a death date that would make sense for the age that we would suspect, because we'd expect him to have been born sometime in the 1830s, 1840s, maybe 1820s, and dying in 1910, that's a fairly typical age. He would have died somewhere between the age of 70 and 90 maybe. So it seemed likely, and everything is matching up with the town. Now, there's a lot more research to be done for this side, and I even found a new possible brother to my great-grandfather whose name is Sam Goldberg. And in the immigration records for Peretz, he was detained at Ellis Island for having no money, but who came to vouch for him to get him out? His brother Sam Goldberg. And where was Sam Goldberg living? On Allen Street. And who did I find in the 1905 New York State Census living on Allen Street? This Sam Goldberg. Now, I've contacted descendants of this Sam, and I'm waiting to hear some good news back. I did hear a response from one of the descendants, but we haven't been able to do anything to truly confirm it, and I don't know if they believe me or what they think, so I'm hoping that I hear back soon. But this is truly amazing to actually be able to not only get all of these new branches of the family, but to have traced it back a generation. And if that gravestone truly is my second great-grandfather, then we have the name of my third great-grandfather, which would be Chaim Goldenberg. Thank you so much for checking out my video. If you enjoyed, please be sure to give the thumbs up. You can also click right about here if you'd like to subscribe. It's completely free to do so. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at GeneaVlogger. I'm the GeneaVlogger. See you in my next video.